Funding is always the hardest part of this equation. It always is. And I know that the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, the United States did not go broke on the backs of teachers and paraprofessionals and the students in public schools. I would like to welcome our parents, students, community partners, our members, and our candidates. Carol Mosley Braun. Miguel de Valle. James Meeks. Gary Chico. William Walls. You guys be seated.
All right. We take orders well.
We took attendance.
Yeah, right, you got that right.
I'd like to have a special thank you to the Chicago Teachers Union rank and file members who put this event together. I'd also like to thank our co-sponsors, Cook County College Teachers Union Local 1600. Is there anyone here from 1600? Represent. SEIU Local 73. Unite Here Local 1. Operator Engineers Union Local 143. Local 399 for hosting. All the unions that represent the folks that feed our children, clean our classrooms, make our rooms warm and comfy, and then teach them after school. And sometimes go to second jobs after leaving CPS. I want to thank CAN TV for recording and broadcasting this event. And I would like to introduce our moderator for the evening, WVON radio host, activist, and former alderman, our own governor, Cliff Kelly.
Give Madam President another round of applause, please. I am so pleased to be here. Many of you know my involvement and my commitment, that is, to education, and we've talked about education for so long, and we're so pleased to see all of this. Isn't this great? Give yourselves a big round of applause. Wonderful. Wonderful. I can recall how we were so concerned about education, and during the last administration nationally, you know, it was really something. Many of you probably don't know this because you haven't been here. I mean, you probably didn't hear it on the air. It was late. Former President Bush's library burned to the ground. Yeah, right. Yeah, both books were lost. And he was extremely upset because he had almost finished coloring the second one. So you do know he was having breakfast in the White House dining room with the Vice President one morning, and the server was a fairly attractive lady. She came over and said, "Mr. President, what will it be?" And you know, he had that little quirk. He says, How about a quickie? That's why she responded. She said, she said, Mr. President, I don't care who you are. You can't insult me like that, and walked away, and the Vice President leans over and says, that's pronounced quiche. So, education obviously is very important, and we've got a great group here today. I have been involved, as Madam President mentioned, in politics, and which of course cannot exclude education. And again, I just want to mention, to make sure, because you know, we always like to mention who the co-sponsors are, so let me repeat them. Cook County College Teachers Union Local 1600, SEIU Local 73, Unite Here Local 1, Access Living, and of course the Operating Engineers Local 143. And again, we all love CAN TV, Channel 19, and we certainly appreciate them being here videoing the event. And let me say, this will be rebroadcast. Check the website. It will be on a Sunday. So it will be rebroadcast, certainly, obviously, before the election. So watch for that. And let me tell all of our participants right now, I know many of you want to talk to the audience, which I understand, but please make sure you're speaking into the mic, because otherwise it won't be recorded. So when this is reshown, which will be broadcasting also on WVON, we want to make sure we hear everything you say. Rules for the participants. You're seated as you are because the names were drawn this morning to determine the seating order. Questions will move from the audience from left to right, from the audience's perspective. For each new question, the next person to the right takes the first turn. In other words, we'll start off with the ambassador first, and then we'll move, in the next question, the clerk will take the next question. So we'll do that rotation. I will ask 4 questions, and then 3 from the audience. And then there'll be one final question. There'll be no closing remarks. The questions from the audience. Audience received a question card to submit to ask the candidates. The questions were collected from the audience, and 3 were selected as the best questions. You know how you combine everything and to make sure that it's not repetitive. The Chicago Teachers Union Legislative and PAC committee chairpersons will determine which questions will be asked, and the chairpersons and another CTU member will then read the questions out loud right here from the podium. There is a timekeeper, and we are pleased to have him here because this is so important. Timekeepers. Eric Escalenda is going to be our timekeeper. Raise your hand, sir. Give him a round of applause. And he's promised he's going to keep time. Each response will be allowed 1 minute per question. The timekeeper will flash a yellow sign, lady and gentlemen, a yellow sign at 15 seconds, right, and a red sign when the time is up. So,
thank you.
This is rules for the audience. Everybody here has some responsibility. Each person was given a scorecard. Now, this is really good. And all you teachers and so forth, you know how to score. The scorecard is for the audience to use for their own evaluation purposes, all right? And we really want those. The scorecard has 4 categories, which will be my first 4 questions. The audience can enter a letter grade for each category and a final grade. I think that's a great idea. Request that participants are cordial and respectful, as well as the audience in their response. We know the participants will be, but this is not going to be a rally, you know, so we don't want a lot of whatever for whoever your favorite candidate happens to be. You know, it's not in the U.S. Congress where people holler and liar and all that. We're not going to have any of that, okay? The intro, we don't really need. You know, all of you people are familiar with these candidates. You all know who they are. You know what they have done. You know what their background is. And for me to take more time to go through that is really not necessary because we want to hear from them. Is that okay? Yeah. All right, okay, perfect, great. So let's start off with opening statements, and the first is, of course, Ambassador Carol Mosley Braun.
Thank you very much to the Chicago Teachers Union, Ms. Lewis, all the members. I'm really delighted to be here, and thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to talk with you, visit with you about this very critical issue. You know, public education is a public good, and it reflects who we are as a society and as a community. I am the candidate of all of these who has a consistent record of not just support, but advocacy for quality public education that is universally available. And my platform with regard to education can be summed up in 2 words: neighborhood schools. I want to see to it that every school and every neighborhood has the resources to do the job that it needs to do. And by resources, I don't just mean money, but committed teachers, competent administrators, engaged parents in an environment suitable for learning. And to me, that means that we go back to the basics and get back music, art, physical education. My time is up already. How is that possible? Okay, well, did you count my thank yous? Well, thank you again. I have a lot more to say about this issue. Again, over a career, I have been there for you, and I will be there for you as your mayor. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk.
Education has been my lifelong passion. And it's my lifelong passion because of 2 teachers, my 3rd grade teacher and my 8th grade teacher, in a Chicago public school. They set me on the course that has led me here today. I majored in education. My first bill as a state senator was dealing with education, the bill that helped create local school councils. My first speech on the Senate floor was to deal with education and to fight off cuts in education. And now I'm running for mayor to continue my work in education and to work in partnership with you.
Thank you, Mr. Devalier. And next, Senator Meeks.
My name is Senator James Meeks, and I have been the leading advocate in our state to fight for education funding over the last 8 years. I've seen you in Springfield. I've marched with you in Springfield. Many of you don't even know my name, but you call me by my bill number, 750. I sponsored Senate Bill 750, and I passed House Bill 174 that was designed to put $2 billion into our public education system. And I will continue as mayor to fight for the schools of the city of Chicago.
Thank you so much, Senator Meeks. And next, Attorney Jerry Chico.
Thank you very much, Cliff. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you. I am a lifelong Chicagoan. 3 generations of my family have been educated by the Chicago Public Schools, including my own children. Very, very proud of that. For me, public education is the bedrock of our city. We have no choice but to make sure that we are applying the resources necessary to give our children the finest public education possible. That has been what I've done since 1995, when I had the privilege of working with you at the Chicago Public Schools. I worked hard to forge a good relationship with the teachers union. I was proud of the 8 years of labor progress that we made, not only with the teachers, but with the engineers and the other groups that helped our school system become very, very good. And I look very much forward to you as your mayor continuing that working relationship. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chico. And next, our friend William Walls, Doc Walls.
Good evening. I was born and raised in Chicago, graduated Horace Mann Elementary, Chicago Vocational High School, Tuskegee University, and Illinois Institute of Technology, Chicago-Kent College of Law. Served as a top assistant to Harold Washington. I want to be the nanotechnology mayor. I want to make Chicago the world center for nanotechnology development and nanofabrication. I fight for a superior public school education for each and every individual child. And that transcends the development of just modern buildings with state-of-the-art equipment and facilities which are conducive to safe and potentially productive educational environments. My goal is to make sure that the city of Chicago respects the teachers here in the city of Chicago and brings back those teachers that were dismissed summarily. We have to make seniority mean something here in the city of Chicago, and we have to have an honor system. Teachers who give so much of themselves to the educational system should be rewarded, not demoted, not fired. And as the mayor of the city of Chicago, I will make certain that we have a fair system for all.
Thank you very much. Now, there are others who were invited, of course, who can't be here. And I want to mention one of them. In fact, he has a statement. This is Congressman Danny K. Davis, who certainly wanted to be here with you tonight. I tried to explain to him that this was more important than that vote on the House floor, even though President Obama did personally call him and ask him to please be there. Let me read the following statement. John F. Kennedy once remarked that our progress as a nation can be no swifter than our progress in education. Similarly, I believe our progression as a great city will move no faster than the progress we make for our city's students. As mayor, I will be dedicated to advancing such progress by backing an elected school board for the Chicago Public Schools, insisting that the next CEO of CPS has experience in the field of education and in the classroom, pushing for a return of dollars lost to CPS through tax increment financing, ensuring that the proliferation of charter schools doesn't harm our public school system. And an aside here, congratulations to you folks for yesterday. Okay. Ensuring small classes, particularly grades K through 3. I have been involved in the field of education as a classroom teacher, college instructor, and a member of Congress, working on a wide variety of educational issues for the past 30 years. As a result, I have a working knowledge of the issues facing students and teachers in today's classrooms. As mayor, I promise to fight to ensure that the state of Illinois meets its constitutional obligation to fund education on every level and to work with the CTU to reach an agreement on expanding the school year and day. No matter what challenges our schools face, let it never be said that teachers are the cause, for they should never be scapegoats for the system's educational failures. I have a strong record for standing behind organized labor and would be particularly honored to fully support and to be fully supported by the CTU. And many thanks to your continued success. Danny K. Davis. Now, I have, we weren't sure you might show up, so it told me, hey, look, we got this up here just in case. We got another one, too. I don't have a statement. I got one I could make, but I don't think that would be it. It's Rahm Emanuel, for those who can't see. I got to do something else with it. That's all right. Okay, let's go for our first statement, which we will open with the Honorable Miguel Duvalier, and then we'll work down and end up with Ambassador Braun. The governing bodies, the Chicago Public Schools and city colleges, are appointed by the mayor, yet almost all other school boards are elected by voters. The most recent CEOs of both entities have no background in education administration and have never taught a class. Do you believe that this is the question, do you believe that academic credentials and experience in education should be required to lead CPS and our city colleges? What is your position on an elected representative school board?
I believe that the superintendent of the Chicago Public Schools should be an individual who has an educational background, number one. Number two, I believe that we have talent. And while I recognize and I appreciate the calls for a national search, I think we have talent right here in Chicago to run the Chicago Public Schools. I also believe that the chancellor of the city colleges should also be someone with an educational background. Absolutely.
Senator Meeks?
The superintendent of Chicago Public Schools must be an educator. I think that the experiment of the last 15 years has been a total disaster. And I think to put our children in that jeopardy is a crime and a shame.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chico.
I believe in a strong chief education officer right next to a CEO. I had the privilege of working with Dr. Cosette Buckney, Dr. Blondine Davis, and Barbara Eason-Watkins. The issue there, the issue with Barbara Watkins is they didn't use her. And that was wrong, and I said so, and I'll say it again. If you have exemplary educators in this system, and we need a pipeline to move them up so that they can have a leadership position in our school system.
Thank you, Mr. Chico. And Mr. Walls.
I fought for Barbara Eason-Watkins, and I believe that we have to have a superintendent of Chicago Public Schools, not a CEO. We have to have an education-first model, not a business-first model. It can't be about money, jobs, and contracts. It has to be about educating our children and make certain that they can follow their hearts, their minds, and their talents and achieve all of their goals and their dreams. We have to open up their experiences. But we also have to have an elected school board, a single-member district elected school board with a president elected citywide.
Okay, thank you so much. Ambassador Braun.
We absolutely ought to have an educator at the head of the Chicago schools. The experiment in which CEOs were put in place started with the proposition that children were like widgets and you just kind of count the numbers and have results come from that. An educator will be able to give educational leadership to the system. In terms of the school board, I have to tell you something. I was the floor leader when Harold Washington became mayor, and I had to fight like tooth and nail to keep them from taking the ability to appoint the head of the schools from the mayor. They tried really hard. We fought it, and we won. And Mayor Washington was committed to having control of the schools because he believed that it was a matter of accountability. Now, admittedly, we have not had that accountability in this city in the last 20 years, but I believe that accountability ought to rest with the mayor, and I think that we should have a citizen involvement with a nominating commission for the school board.
And thank you. Our next question, and Senator Meeks, you will go first on this.
What's the matter?
I agree with you.
A new Illinois House Special Committee on Education Reform convened today in Aurora. They will also hold hearings tomorrow. Its agenda was written by well-funded out-of-state organizations and includes linking student test scores to teacher evaluations, prohibiting teacher strikes, making it easier to dismiss and terminate teachers, and eliminate tenure. The question is, Senator Meeks, what is your position on the goals of the Education Reform Committee?
You don't think I would say I agree, do you? I have gone on record. I stated it yesterday, and I'll state it every day thereafter, that any reforms involving the Chicago teachers, the Chicago Teachers Union ought to be at the table, and the Chicago Teachers Union ought to be given the first crack at crafting those reforms and showing us what reform looks like through the eyes of a teacher. That's what I support, and that's what I'll stand behind.
Thank you so much, Senator. And next is Mr. Chico.
I don't believe in the, I don't know where this committee came from. I mean, I looked around and there was a committee that was not only sat, but is supposed to have its work complete in 2.5, 3 weeks. I don't know how you do that. I think that's too fast, and I don't think it's being done in partnership with the teachers. I don't need a no-strike clause because I didn't have one with the teachers. I believed in sitting at the table and working out any issues we have to forge a good contract. I don't need the threat of not having them strike in order to come to that conclusion. And also, I worked within the current tenure system for many, many years and was able to produce results for our system over 6 years. So I'm a little skeptical about where this committee came from. I think we can do this in a much more collaborative way, and I look forward to doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Chico. Okay. And next, Mr. Walls.
You know, we have to stop demonizing teachers. We have to make certain that people understand that teachers are not the problem. Teachers are the people who are committed to this system. Teachers are the ones who make the real sacrifices, who show up every single day to make certain that our children receive the kind of education that we want our children to receive. But the teachers can't do it alone. We have to stop allowing parents to come into the schools and tell the teachers how to run the classrooms, but instead invite the parents in and have them work in partnership with the teachers. It starts with not just the administration and the principals and the teachers and the parents and the students, but everybody has to have a buy-in to education. So this reform committee is wrong. We ought to tell them they're wrong, and we ought to make certain that when we're fighting for a superior public school education for each and every individual child, that we're not trampling on teachers and their commitment to our children.
Okay, thank you so much. Ambassador Braun.
Have you noticed how every time they talk about reform of education, it brings any money with it? The fact of the matter is that all of these conversations are about scapegoating teachers and finding another way to further privatize our school systems. That's the problem. When you look at education funding in this country, it's like a pyramid. Less than 10% of the cost of education comes from the federal government. The state has slipped behind its obligation and only comes up with about 20% now, as opposed to with the full funding the Constitution calls for. And the rest of it comes out of local dollars. There are not enough resources. I have tried as a state legislator to get more state money for schools in the city of Chicago. We succeeded in getting money to create CHAZ, but really that was an uphill battle and continues to be a fight. At the national level, I started the school construction issue debate about our crumbling schools in an effort to get additional money from the federal government to pay for bricks and mortar so that local dollars could be freed up for teachers and for classroom needs. The fact is that they want to privatize the system, give it to corporate America to run, and our children will be left behind if they don't already have resources and assets. And that is the issue, and I believe that's the agenda of the crowd that's down in Aurora today.
Thank you. City Clerk DeValier, please.
Well, first of all, fast-tracking any legislation is wrong. That's not the way the legislative process should be used, and I don't think the leadership in Springfield should be allowing this legislation to be fast-tracked. Hearings are necessary. Everyone has to have an opportunity to have input. Everyone has to participate in a process of crafting legislation. And I know that the CTU, along with many other groups and the IEA and the IFT, want what is best for the children in the state of Illinois. And they also want competent teachers, highly qualified teachers in every classroom. And I know that every single one of you wants the same thing. And so the question is, how do you get to that point? And how do you develop an evaluation system that is fair, an evaluation system that is used to inform instruction and to help you develop through professional development, not to punish people for the purpose of making a statement to then give the system an excuse to privatize or to continue to establish a dual-track system of education, which is wrong.
Thank you so much. All right. I want to mention to you, I see many of you, of course, you're used to this, grading. You want to make sure. I can't think of a better audience to ask you to grade the participants here, so make sure, because we want to see how that works out. Our next, of course, is for Mr. Chico. We'll go first. In the last year, the Willis Tower was declared a blighted district. TIF money, tax increment financing money, was used to lure United Airlines to move their headquarters into the building. And of course, at the same time, CPS declared a budget deficit of $720 million for the coming school year. TIFs take away between $250 and $350 million from the Chicago public schools per year. The question is, Mr. Chico, how would you change the administration of the TIF, the Tax Increment Financing Program?
Well, first of all, the Willis Tower, if that's blighted, I'm blind. That's not blighted at all. First of all, we need to bring the sunshine on this proposal. These things are being done in the dark. I've proposed, as a mayoral candidate, the construction of a website called Sunshine Chicago to put all of these TIFs on the website so that everybody can see what's going on with the money, who's getting what, and what's where. I am proud when I was at the school board to fight for our share of those TIF dollars to construct schools throughout our city. We used a good portion of that money to construct 65 new schools throughout our city and renovate 400 more in all parts of Chicago. The Chicago public schools deserve their fair share of those monies.
Okay, thank you very much. And next, Mr. Walls.
It's essential that we sunset those TIF districts which are not truly blighted at this point in time. I support projects like Sweet Home Chicago's project to make certain we have affordable or low-income housing in Chicago. That's essential. That's important. I support projects that promote economic development in the city of Chicago because we have to have stability and we have to be able to compete in the national and global marketplace. But I don't support the porting of TIF dollars from blighted communities into districts like the LaSalle Street TIF district to fund projects that don't benefit anybody who looks like they've been blighted or underserved. We've got to make certain that we're not taking the money from taxing bodies like Chicago Public Schools, but instead we're making certain that we're providing a way for our children and our children's children to have stability in their lives just like we had opportunities in our lives. The most important thing we can do at this point in time is have the public involved in the operation of TIF funds.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walls. Next, Ambassador Braun.
It's wrong to divert money from public education into these tax increment financial boondoggles, because quite frankly, a lot of the money sits off budget. And that, I think, is the biggest problem with the TIFs, the lack of transparency. Not that we don't want to have funds for redevelopment of housing and those, and we absolutely need to have development, but to take money out of the funding base for the Chicago for education and then put it on an off-budget operation that nobody really knows what's going on with it. Even the aldermen in some instances don't know what's going on with the aldermen. I believe sunshine is the best disinfectant, and we need to shine the light on what's going on with the TIF money, put it online so everybody can see, so the city can be informed about what they're doing, and not use these funds for funding not just Willis Tower. The Chicago Board of Trade got $15 million of TIF funds. So we just need to put a moratorium on this program until we can figure out where the money went, as we audit where the money went, and then once we've done that, then go back to keeping the funds for funding for education directed to education and to the students.
All right. Thank you, Ambassador. City Clerk Miguel Devalier.
You know, the wonderful thing about political campaigns and campaign seasons is that all of a sudden the answers are there. We're all saying the same thing. We're all saying the same thing. So the question is, what's going to happen after, hopefully, April 5th? What are we going to do in between elections to make sure that TIF dollars are available for school construction and for operating support for the school district? What are we going to do to make sure that never again will a TIF be awarded to an area that's not blighted? What are we going to do to make sure that there's transparency, that we can track every single dollar? Those are the things, and certainly the proposals have been put out. The question is the follow-up. We need to get it done. And the best way to get it done is through an organized city, organized neighborhoods, people, institutions that are tracked and challenged on an ongoing basis rather than only during election season.
Thank you. Thank you. And Senator James Meeks.
Then if we're all saying the same thing and we all believe the same thing, then we should tell the people who are doing it right now that they're wrong for doing it and stop doing it. That's the thing that we ought to tell them now. We have a platform now. We're making statements now. People are listening to us. So why not tell the mayor that the TIF is not his personal piggy bank? Why not tell him that he's using the money wrong? And why not tell the city council that we're upset with the way things are happening? There's no need in hiding it. If all of us are saying it up here, then let's tell it every time we talk, and let's tell it every time we speak. It's wrong to use TIF money in areas that are not blighted. And it is wrong, and it will always be wrong. But I think since we all agree, we should all start saying it.
That's right.
All right. Okay. Thank you, thank you. The next question Mr. Bill Walls will be the first respondent. The public has expressed outrage at the selling off of parking meters and the Skyway at the city's expense. Many contend that the same problems exist within CPS and its use of charter schools. What limitations would you place on the privatization of the Chicago public schools through charter schools? The question is, would you require greater oversight of charter schools, including full financial disclosure and enforcement of labor laws for employees to organize a union? Mr. Walls.
The answer is absolutely yes. I don't like privatization. Privatization is a sinister scheme. It's a plot that Daley used to reward his friends, punish his enemies, avoid the Shackman decree, and at the same time bust unions. I don't like charter schools. Charter schools have no financial responsibility. First of all, charter schools should be made to have a performance bond so that if they fold on Friday, we ensure their operation on Monday. So children aren't sent scurrying, trying to find a new place to go to school. With charter schools, one, the teachers union can't organize in charter schools. We have a problem with that. They have no local elected school councils by law, so it disenfranchises and disconnects parents and educational community activists. Children are made to go by good performing schools to get to low performing schools. And finally, teachers don't get the same pay and they don't get the same benefits. So we have to have scrutiny over charter schools.
Thank you so much. Ambassador Braun.
You know, there is a continuum in the privatization of public education, starting with the public schools on the one hand and vouchers on the other. And the charter schools fall somewhere in the middle. Further closer to the public schools, frankly, are the moves toward the double track, which we have with the magnet schools and the special admissions. So you got the general admission, special admission, charter schools, vouchers, in that order. And I think that all of it undermines our ability to provide quality public education to every child. Our obligation must be to make sure that no child is left behind for real, that every neighborhood has schools in it that children can walk to from their homes and get a quality education where they live. There is no question but that the charter schools that are already in place should be held to account to the same kind of standards that we insist the public system account for, that they are required to open their books and they are allowed to unionize just as the public system is. But in the meantime, my view is that we need to promote public education, public schools, and neighborhood schools.
Thank you. Thank you very much. City Clerk Miguel de Valier.
Charter schools should be unionized. We all understand that. But they should also be held accountable, and their mechanisms should be in place to do that. How many charter schools have been closed because of a lack of performance? Even though that's what the original legislation called for. They were given 5 years. It hasn't happened. And so why hasn't it happened? Because the accountability measures are not there. And of course, people are looking the other way within the system because they don't want to limit the growth of charters. We want academic options for our students. All parents want academic options. Teachers want academic options for their children. But we have to support our system. And right now, we're moving towards vouchers. That is where we're moving towards. And we can't allow vouchers. Once vouchers are allowed, then we will have given up on our system, and we cannot do that. We cannot give up on our public educational system. We must strengthen it, and we must go back to focusing on our neighborhood schools.
All right. And our next speaker is Senator James Meeks.
Chartered schools must be held accountable, and we must remember the original reason for charter schools. The reason we allowed charter schools was so that charter schools could try things and charter schools could do different things that all of our bureaucracy was not allowing us to do in the public schools. And charter schools were supposed to come back and report best practices so that the public school then, after they saw what was working when you get rid of the bureaucracy, could try those best practices. What charter schools, well, the bureaucracy has come from Springfield, and the bureaucracy comes from CPS. We hand down things that schools have to do. So charter schools were supposed to report best practices, and where they have failed is that they have never reported best practices.
Yeah, next, Mr. Chico, please.
Charter schools have to be held accountable. They are public schools. Let's remember, these are public schools. They need to be held accountable. We should hold them to performance standards. Their test scores have to be reported, just like Chicago public school test scores have to be reported. Labor can organize in charter schools. I support the right of labor to organize, and I think you will see that day come. I also believe that as a parent, I like the idea of options to choose for among my children. I think a lot of parents like that option for their children, and I think that good performing charter schools will remain a part of our menu of options.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Now, most of you heard me earlier mention the fact that as you came in, you were asked to write a question on a card, and the staff has gone through those and put them together and come up with some of the best questions that we think you would want an answer to. And before I bring up the Legislative Committee chairperson, I just want to recognize, this is dangerous, but I try to do this when I see people. We had 3 city councilmen here. We might have more, I'm not sure, so please forgive me if I didn't see you. We have Alderman Fioretti from the 1st Ward. Right.
Second Ward.
Second Ward, yeah, I'm sorry, 2nd Ward, I know that, yeah, thank you very much, 2nd Ward. Alderman Dowell from the 3rd Ward, thank you. And of course, Alderman Munoz from the 22nd Ward. And we certainly appreciate them coming out. And are there any other council members here that I missed? No. Let's now bring up the CTU's Legislative Committee chairperson. Please come forward, Regina O'Connor. And the first question will go to Ambassador Braun, but of course I'll do that. Ah, here you are. Great.
Thank you. Recent enacted Illinois law allows the Chicago Board of Education, unlike other school districts in Illinois, to use student test scores as the sole evaluator of Chicago teachers. Will you commit to taking action to discourage CPS from using such an evaluation method?
Again, I think it is a shameful indicator of where we are, and blaming the teachers, that teachers are now being required to teach to the test as opposed to teach to the child. And using just scores to try to quantify the children in the Chicago public schools reduces our children to the position of being widgets more than children in other school districts, and it's wrong. I believe that we should have an evaluation system that takes into account the performance of the child, of the student, and the like. We have to make those reports, but at the end of the day, test scores are not the only indicia, because children learn in different ways, they develop at different rates, and teachers are the best evaluators of the progress of the children in their care. And I just think that we've gone in the absolute wrong direction of trying to quantify failure, which is what that is all about, really. And I think that we have to begin to reevaluate that direction, change that direction, and begin to get back to a school system that is collaborative between teachers and parents and the administration, a collaboration in behalf of the children, because that helps our community and that helps our country.
Thank you very much. The next answer is from City Clerk Miguel de Valle.
The question was, should it be used as a sole
Let me repeat the question. Recent enacted Illinois law allows the Chicago Board of Education, unlike other school districts in Illinois, to use student test scores as the sole evaluator of Chicago teachers. Will you commit to taking action to discourage CPS from using such an evaluation method?
Well, and I did hear the question correctly. So evaluate. Absolutely not. Evaluations are important, but they're helpful only if they're used to help an individual grow. And all of us want to grow. We all want feedback. We all want people to let us know how they view our work. It helps us develop. And so a feedback system that's based on data, including test scores, is just part of the evaluation process. But then there's classroom observations. There's peer observations. There's supervisors' observations. There are all kinds of things that need to be part of a comprehensive evaluation process that is not used for the purpose of punishing people, but for the purpose of helping individuals develop.
Thank you very much. This was an excellent question, and we thank, of course, Ms. O'Connor as the Legislative Committee Chairperson from CPS. Our next, of course, is Senator Meeks.
The answer is yes, I will commit to making sure that we don't use that measurement as a sole indicator of how well a teacher is doing and how well a child is doing. So to answer the question, yes, I will commit to doing everything in my power to helping our teachers make sure that they're not judged by one indicator.
Thank you so much. Next, Mr. Chico.
Clearly, we should not use a test score as the sole measure of a teacher's performance. It's just wrong. I would work in partnership with the teachers union. I know that they're hard at work right now on their own model to provide with the Chicago Public Schools to come up with, and here's the operative word, we should do this in collaboration. This is not anything that needs to be foisted on anybody. We're trying to arrive at what we believe is the best performance evaluation system here. We can come to common ground on this. This is nothing to be fighting about. And I think that the way we shouldn't legislate this from Springfield, just like we talked about this committee earlier, we should get this done ourselves. I was proud of the fact that when I was president of Chicago Public Schools, we included teachers on many of our working committees, and I think that's why we did well.
Thank you so much. All right, Mr. Walls, Bill Walls.
As a society, we have to do much more than simply warehouse students and teach them or train them to pass tests. We got to teach them reading, writing, math, and science, obviously. But we also have to teach them the humanities. We have to teach them the arts. We have to teach them civics. We have to teach them history. We have to teach them humanities. We have to teach them languages. We have to teach them vocations. We have to prepare our children to be able to follow their hearts, their minds, and their talents, and ultimately pursue the American dream. Whatever that is for them, that's what we have to prepare them to do. So we cannot evaluate teachers on the basis of how well they trained a child to pass a test. You can train a monkey to pass a test. We have to teach our children to become independent. Teach them to get involved in the global and national economy. Teach them to get out here and be fearless and be the people that we're proud to be ourselves. And that's what we have to do as it relates to our children.
All right. Thank you so much. Again, we thank Ms. O'Connor. Next, another audience question, and I certainly commend the chairpersons for the committees in being able to pull all this together. I've been involved in that before, and it's not an easy job because you're trying to get something that is interesting to all of you, and I think it's a great way of doing it. The next question is from the Political Action Committee, and the chairperson, please come forward, is Stacey Davis Gates. Ms. Davis Gates.
Students in underperforming schools come from blighted neighborhoods, home environments characterized by chronic unemployment or underemployment, absentee parents, limited parental academic achievement, sometimes substance abuse, and domestic violence. How can teachers be expected and held accountable to bring these students to average achievement levels when their situations are anything but average?
Got some good questions coming from the audience. And this goes first to City Clerk DeVetti. I got it right.
Every single one of you is in the teaching profession because you believe that every child can learn, regardless of their circumstances. But you also believe that there's a support system that's necessary, and that the parent is an important part of that support system, and that you need to ensure that the social needs are addressed, that the human needs are addressed also. Our school system is not well equipped to address those needs. We lost our social workers. We lost our truant officers. We've lost all kind of support personnel. You are working with very few resources. That has to change, but every child can learn, and you believe that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And next, of course, is Senator James Meeks.
I believe that every child, I'm catching Senator Carol Mosley to pass it along. I believe that every child can learn, and as the mayor of the city of Chicago, there are things that can be done. We have human services that should be a part of children's lives. We have a Department of Mental Health. We have counselors that we have to put back in school. And I have fought and I have introduced legislation to bring truant officers back to our schools. I think because when we had truant officers, somebody knew that our children were not there. But I think that churches, I think community organizations, I think the whole village that we keep talking about, it takes the whole village to make sure that all of our kids are properly educated. And I think that we have to bring everybody in on a child's education and not think it's the job of the school or the teacher to do it alone.
Thank you so much. Again, I want to commend the Political Action Committee and its chairperson, Stacey Davis Gates, and I want to repeat it as we did the last one. Students in underperforming schools come from blighted neighborhoods. Some come from home environments characterized by chronic unemployment, absentee fathers, limited parental academic achievement, sometimes substance abuse and domestic violence. How can teachers be expected to bring these students to average achievement levels when their situation is anything but average? That is something that all of you know about, and it's an excellent question. And next, of course, is Mr. Chico.
Well, it's very difficult to expect that when you describe the conditions that are there. My wife and my son are teachers. In fact, my son was a preschool teacher at Smith Elementary School, and we would talk at length about the conditions of his students that they came from. Very, very challenging. Parents were unemployed. Problems like you heard described in the question, and I think it's up to us as a society to try to help as many people as possible to make our homes stronger so that the teachers do have a good chance to do the best that they can to bring our children along. Right now, these conditions are horrendous. It is a resource problem. We are not able at present, because we have a city budget that's broken, we have a school budget that's broken, we have a state budget that's broken, and we have a federal budget that's broken. Until we begin to straighten these things out, we will not be able to develop the resources to help our homes so that we do give our teachers children who are coming nourished, dressed, prepared, and respectful of the teachers that work with them every day. I think that's the answer in the long run.
Okay, thank you, sir. And Mr. Walls, please.
Some people say police officers see adults at their lowest ebb. Well, teachers see students at their lowest ebb. And keep in mind, we have in Chicago 12,500 students who are homeless. Many of them are orphans. Some of them have no parents whatsoever, no home structure whatsoever, but you're expected to deal with them. And we know that we can't have a one-size-fits-all educational system. We have to fight for superior public school education for each and every individual child, irrespective of their circumstances. But that means that we have to provide the teachers the support that they need. We need crisis intervention in those schools. We need organizations like a ceasefire in the schools, helping to resolve conflict and make certain that those children have a safe environment in which they can actually begin to learn and begin to prosper. We have to make certain that we are not just dismissing children and just farming them through the system, but instead caring about their individual needs and taking care of them and making certain that they are well educated.
Thank you so much. And, of course, Ambassador Braun.
For many students, the school is a safe haven, and the classroom is a place where they can go that it takes them away from the violence and the ugliness of their existence at home. And so it seems to me that the most we can do, no, the most we must do, the least we must do, is provide teachers with the resources and the support that where a child has a particular need, whether it's hunger or if it's homelessness, or if the child has mental health issues, or if the child has juvenile delinquency issues, or the child has an abusive home, health care issues, that the teacher should have the resources to be able to refer that child and give that child the support that child needs. You know when a child comes to school and he's been beat up. You know when a child comes to school and he's hungry or he's sick. And so I think that providing the resources, not to the money point, I have served at the local, state, national, and international governments. I got to tell you something. The money is there. Make no mistake about it. The money is there. It's just a matter of how it's being prioritized and how it's being spent. And it's not being spent in the classroom. It's not being spent on these children that have these special issues. And I believe that as mayor, I will fight to make sure that we have a more equitable distribution of the money that's in the system already.
Thank you so much. All right. All right, we have another question from the audience. That's one of our state team members, Mr. David Hernandez. If you would come up, please. Mr. Hernandez. There he is.
Thank you. Good evening. Last summer, the Chicago Public Schools dismissed over 1,200 teachers and paraprofessionals, most of which were excellent and superior rated. The board claimed it was due to the budget crisis. I'm a teacher, a special ed teacher at Social Justice High School. We're a small school. We had 35 students, or 35 teachers, pardon me. Now we have 29 this year, which we lost one position in the special education department, and it's made our position, or made the job that we do is very difficult. So my question to you is a two-part question. What would you do to prevent this annual crisis? And how would you respond to this crisis if it does happen again?
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Great. Thank you, David Hernandez. We appreciate it. And, of course, we start off with Senator Meeks.
I think that the worst thing that we could do is to take teachers out of the classroom. But I could tell you all, I have been down in Springfield for the last 8 years fighting for more money for our schools. And the will, Senator Mosley Brown said the money is there, but the will is not there. And you guys keep sending the same people back every year, and the will is still not there. And until Springfield provides the money, we're only given 28% of the money for a child's education. Until Springfield provides the resources that we need for our public schools, you're going to continue to see teachers dismissed from classrooms.
Thank you so much. And our next speaker, of course, is Mr. Chico. Gary?
The long-term health of our public schools is absolutely paramount. I propose that we don't simply wait for Springfield to help us fix our problems, or we may be waiting a very long time. I think we have to take matters into our own hands. I've proposed in my plan for education the slashing of the central office by 1/3 and sending and sending those monies to our neighborhood schools to shore them up. That's one way, David, we won't lose teachers at the Social Justice High School, which I was proud to help build. Let me say this, new revenues also have to be derived from other sources. There is now being proposed a land-based casino for Chicago, and I have proposed that the revenues derived from that project be used to support education.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chico. Next is Mr. Walls, Bill Walls.
For the record, I am completely opposed to using gaming as a means of funding education. Education is a right. We can't use gaming to fund education. But we certainly have to make certain that Springfield pays its fair share. We're 49th when it comes to funding education. The only state worse than us is Mississippi, and that's a crying shame. Certainly, as Senator Meeks indicated, we have to have the will and the commitment to properly fund education, but if it doesn't happen, there's 7 forms of funding in Illinois. Income tax, sales tax, federal aid, gambling, motor fuel taxes, public utility taxes. Well, an 8th form for me, fines, fees, and assessments. An 8th form for me is naming rights. I have no problem with private corporations coming in and using their funds to help improve our school infrastructure in exchange for being able to name South Shore High School the Boeing High School, for example. I have no problem whatsoever with making certain that we have fundamental change in the way we fund education here in Illinois. No problem.
Okay, thank you. Next is Ambassador Braun.
We shouldn't have to grasp for straws to fund one of the most important activities that our society is obliged to provide to its citizens. Let's start with that. I believe that we have to not only better deploy the resources that come from our local property taxes, that is to say the resources that are here at the city level. We have to better deploy those resources, limiting the amount that goes into the central office and put some of the administrators back to work. I mean, back in the classroom. We need the support for the classroom. That's the first thing. We need the support in the neighborhoods so kids can walk to the school in their neighborhood and get a quality education. That ought to be the focus, not all these every new experiment that comes out of Washington or whatever gets adopted and layer on layer on layer on layer. Nobody knows what they're doing. We need to simplify the system, cut out some of the bureaucracy, focus the money on the schools. Now, in terms of funding, and I'm going to keep going because you didn't give me my whole minute. All right. In terms of funding, we need to make certain that we do demand additional funding from Washington. Less than 10% of the cost of elementary sector is unacceptable. We can fund a military budget. We can fund schools because that's our future.
Right.
That is where our resources have to come from.
Thank you, Ambassador.
And Springfield needs to do better and abide by the Constitution.
All right. Thank you very much. And last, of course, Mr. Duvalier, clerk.
The governor is from the city of Chicago. The speaker is from the city of Chicago. The Senate president is from the city of Chicago. Why can't we change how we fund public education in the state of Illinois so that we get a greater share of those state aid dollars that are not coming to us? Why is it that even though we had this stimulus package coming from Washington, D.C., because we have a president who has made education a priority and made a record amount of new dollars, federal dollars available for public education, why is it that all those dollars that came here are gone? Where did they go? Where did those millions and millions of dollars go? And certainly we can do a lot of the symbolic things like cutting central office. We're all for that. But that's not going to cut it. That's not going to be enough. We need those dollars from the state, and it's time for us. And as mayor, I will stand up to the Speaker of the House. I will stand up to the Senate President, and I will say it is time. It is time for you to reform how we fund public education in the state of Illinois.
Thank you so much. I think most of you certainly know in this audience that Article 10 of the Illinois State Constitution certainly requires that the state provide primary funding for public school education, a free primary education. I was a member of the CONCON, of the Constitutional Convention, and I remember when we passed that, because we were in, when I say we, the Democrats were in the minority, but everybody voted in favor of that, so we did well on that. But I'm pointing that out to say that please keep a watch, because the Chicago Urban League has filed a lawsuit relative to funding, and it's been acknowledged that it's going to trial, so we watch that, okay? All right, everybody, this is the last question, and it's from the Chicago Teachers Union, and I'm going to ask it, and this will be our last comment from our great participants. And don't forget, we want you to grade everybody, all right? Please grade everybody. The Chicago Teachers Union, the Cook County College Teachers Union, Unite Here, Service Employees International Union, and the Operators Engineers Union together represent over 75,000 households employed by the schools. This is the question. What would you tell our members today is the reason that we should vote for you to be the next mayor of Chicago? Important question, obviously. And Mr. Chico is first.
Thank you very much. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here. I would ask for your support because of my record of public service, having served in the mayor's office, the privilege of having served as the president of the Chicago Public Schools, the Chicago Park District, and the Chicago City Colleges. In each job that I've had, that I've been privileged to hold, I have gone into that job and I have made improvements, and children have improved because of those efforts. I believe it's time to step up again and do public service again. Our city's at a crossroads right now. Some of the proposals you hear are flat and will take us down given the financial challenges that we have at the city and the public schools. I propose we come roaring out of the blocks and starting with the fundamental improvement of our Chicago public schools, which is why the first policy statement I issued was a plan to restore our Chicago public schools to excellence. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next, Bill Walsh.
Since the demise of the stockyards, Chicago has not had an industry to call its own. We're the only major city without its own industry. We missed the opportunity to corner Silicon Valley and have it located right here. The next big emerging industry is nanotechnology. I want to be the mayor who makes Chicago the world center for nanotechnology development and nanofabrication. It's real, and it's coming at the speed of light. And if we are, in fact, a city with an industry, we're now forever economically viable. Our children have hopes and they have dreams, but they now have something to aspire to. Not just simply jobs. They have industry, they have business, they have technology at their disposal. We want to make certain that Chicago is not just plodding along using up funds for beautification and road building and things of that nature. We have to focus on economic development, and we have to make certain that we have things that are unusual right here in the city of Chicago, but real and tangible. And I'm the one candidate for mayor of the city of Chicago who can make that happen.
All right. Ambassador Braun.
Simply put, I'm the most qualified for the job. I have worked and delivered. I'm not a person of a lot of words. I get the job done. And I've been getting the job done. When I was in Springfield as a state legislator, I delivered and, in fact, sponsored every bill to bring money into the Chicago Public Schools, created the Chicago High School for Agricultural Sciences. As recorder of deeds, I even had an editorial written against me because I let parents take time off to deal with their students, their children in the schools, because I was committed to education. When I got to the United States Senate, not only passed the education funding legislation, but came up with the money to create the Bronzeville Military Academy out of the military budget. So I have been fighting for education all this time, and as much to the point, I'm committed to public education because I believe that public education is the cornerstone of our society. So you will have an advocate in me, and I look forward to working with the teachers union, to working with teachers, to working with every possible participant, financiers and the like, to bring the resources to make our schools great and make our neighborhood schools places where kids can go and get a quality public education.
Thank you, Ambassador. Our city clerk, Miguel Devalier.
You know, everyone in this room tonight is passionate about education. We all have different roles, but that's the common thread here tonight. We're passionate about education. In deciding who the next mayor will be, you have to ask yourself lots of questions. You have to ask yourself, who has the track record? Who has the experience? Not just in dealing with the school systems, but also out in the neighborhoods. And how can we bring us together? I say that we have to take the city that is known as the city that works and convert it into the city that works together, bringing every single neighborhood and ensuring that schools become the anchors for our communities that they can be, the anchors that will ensure balanced growth, balanced development, employment opportunities, educational opportunities for the entire family, not just for the students, but the entire family, so that the families can learn together in community learning centers in all our schools. That's why I'm running for mayor, and I ask for your support.
Thank you so much. And Senator James Meeks.
I have a goal that every student in Chicago is reading at grade level by the end of 3rd grade. They are determining how many prisons to build based on how many children are not at grade level by the 3rd grade. I have proposed that we take an 8-year plan put together by the mayor and the Chicago Teachers Union for how we're going to turn Chicago public schools around, because they presently are not working the way they are now. Now, you and I may differ on some issues. I don't agree with everything with my mother and father or my sisters or my brothers, but at the end of the day, we're still family. But the one thing you could say about James Meeks is that every time somebody mentions my name, it's about an educational issue, whether it's going to Winnetka, whether it's marching against the mayor, whatever it is, you know that the issue is about education, and I will continue to work with you to make our schools great schools in the city of Chicago.
Thank you so much. Let's give our great panel a big round of applause, please. I want to thank our timekeeper, Eric. That's no fun, but you make it a lot easier being an MC when we don't have to do it ourselves. I want to thank Joe McDermott, who's done a great job in helping to put this together. Thank you, Joe. And I just want to thank the C2U for honoring me to allow me to come here and address you people tonight through this wonderful panel. I'm so appreciative. Thanks to everybody. And now let's talk to the boss lady, President Karen Lewis. Karen?
I am so proud to be a Chicago public school teacher. And the daughter of 2 Chicago public school teachers and an alum of Chicago Public Schools. This has been a wonderful evening. I'd like to thank all of our participants who have come to this forum and have told the truth, sort of. No, I'm just kidding. You know the old story. I also want to thank Joey McDermott, who is our municipal political coordinator. I want to make sure everybody does their grades, because they will go back to the political action community. They will do a lot of things. But I want to say one thing. Funding is always the hardest part of this equation. It always is. And I know that the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, the United States did not go broke on the backs of teachers and paraprofessionals and the students in public schools. I know that. And there are people who are not here who also need to answer for this, those people who are not paying their fair share. but are the first to criticize us and try to destroy us. It is not acceptable. So I'm not running for office, though, so here we go. I want to thank all of you for coming out. I want to thank Cliff Kelly for coming here. I want to give him an acknowledgement of our thanks. And my husband is sitting right here. I want to thank him because John Lewis is what makes this all happen up here. Thank you all. Please drive safely and have a good evening.